Hello and welcome to Music Analysis, Theory and Technique, the series where we unpack the ideas, the craft and the trickery in some of the better known and some of the lesser known musical works. Today we are looking at She's Electric by Oasis in response to their reunion, which I'm very excited about. In keeping with the theme of this series, I wanted to revisit all of the classic tracks that first inspired me as a guitar player and a musician, and hopefully share that inspiration with you. For those of you watching for the first time, my name is Harry. I've played guitar most of my life, studied composition at the Sydney Conservatorium of Music, and also studied audio engineering. I teach, I do session work, and I make videos, and I currently have a new heavy metal band called Spawn of Seed, which you're more than welcome to check out if you so desire. All right, what a cool song. I always loved the sort of blending of aesthetics in this piece. The opening chords sound kind of grungy. It's got this sort of Brit pop vibe to the whole thing. And then those last chord changes definitely have this Beatlesque and I think even Queen inspired kind of feeling to them. What we're going to do is we're going to have a look at three different things today. We're going to look at the chord progression that we just heard and do an analysis of it. Then we're going to look at the vocal melody and do a quick analysis of that too. And finally, we're going to have a look at how the vocal melody and the chords sync up in a pretty interesting way to finish off. And then we're done, and we'll do it quick because I'm hot in my Liam Gallagher gear at the moment. It's pretty warm today. Let's do it. The chords that we have to begin with are E major, G sharp major, C sharp minor, and then A major. Now, all of these chords, with the exception of the G sharp, fit into the key of E major. By chance, they also fit into the key of A major, but this song is definitely in E, so we're going to be looking through an E lens today. Now, the G sharp is the odd one out. If we're looking at our E major scale and the chord scale that aligns with the E major scale, you'll see that the G sharp, which is our third scale degree, should actually be a minor chord. So we should have a G sharp minor instead of a G sharp major. So how do we make sense of this? Now, we could just write in a major third for this chord, but it leads to a C sharp minor. And so what's actually happening here is it's a secondary dominant. The G sharp major chord is the fifth or the dominant chord of C sharp minor. You can feel that tension release when we get to that chord. So the way that we could make sense of this is E is our first chord, G sharp is our major third, but it's actually the fifth of the C sharp minor, which is our relative minor in the key of E. It's our sixth chord, and that can also function as a one chord in some ways too. And then we finish on an A, which is our fourth chord. Even in those initial opening chords, we're already straying out of the key, but it gets more interesting than that. The next set of chords, after we repeat that initial chord progression 3 times, is C to D to E. Now, there's no C natural in E major. It should be a C sharp. And there's no D natural in E major either. It should be a D sharp. So what's going on here? How did they end up with these chords? And what they're doing is borrowing chords from the parallel minor. Now, what that means is they're taking chords out of the E minor scale and applying them in an E major context. This is something that composers use a fair bit, and it's usually done in this way, where we're borrowing from the minor and putting them in a major context, but it does on occasion get used the opposite way around too. So the way that we'd see these chords as fitting into this progression is that the C is the sixth chord out of E minor. The D is the 7th chord out of E minor. And then obviously when we come back up to the E, it's our 1 chord again. So the way that we'd write this in, if we were looking at this through E major, which we are, is the C is a flattened 6th major chord, and that's because it's based off of the flattened 6th scale degree, and it's a major chord. The D is a flattened 7th, because it's built off of the flattened 7th scale degree, and it's a major chord. And then obviously our E is our 1 again. And that's how we'd put all of those chords together. So it's a really interesting chord progression straight off of the bat, and there's some good trickery and some good craft going on within this. So next we're going to look at the vocal melody, and we're going to look at it in isolation first. Now I've made a lead sheet of this section of the piece, which you can see now. And we're going to go through it. I've written in the solfege syllables as well as what scale degree they are, just in case people aren't familiar with your solfege syllables. And what we can see, if we disregard the final parallel minor chords at the end there, this whole vocal melody fits into the key of E major. In fact, we could take that even further and say that all of it fits into the E major pentatonic scale, except for this one note here. Interestingly as well, every single phrase finishes on the tonic. You can see where all of these rests are. The note before all of these rests is always an E. Now the difference at the end is we get a G natural when that C chord comes in. Now the G is the 5th of our C chord, but the G in context to the E is its minor 3rd. So not only is the C chord borrowed from the parallel minor scale here, but the vocal note, the melody note, is actually the minor 3rd of E as well. That really adds to the minor shift. We're getting this quality change here. And then the D, we have the 2nd scale degree, and then we finish, like all of the phrases, on the 1. And then finally, a couple cool points about how the vocal melody and the chords line up. The first phrase, we get... And now this E note that finishes the first phrase lands during a C sharp minor chord. So it is the 3rd of that C sharp minor. But then we get the A chord, and the E is the 5th of that A chord. But the E, obviously, is also the tonic. It's our tonic of the entire key that we're in. And so that E is a really powerful note to finish on, not only because it's the tonic, but it fits into the chord tones of the 2 chords that are played whilst it's being sung. And the final interesting bit is here in the middle of this second phrase, when the vocal goes up to this C sharp note. So the C sharp in relation to the G sharp is its 4th, and then it's falling to the 3rd. But the interesting thing is we have a G sharp major chord, which has a B sharp in it as its 3rd, but the vocal melody sticks to the key of E major. So it's actually singing just a regular B. So the B that's being sung against the chord is the minor 3rd, whilst the chord actually has the major 3rd in it instead. And that's where we'll leave it for today. I hope you've gotten some value out of this video and hopefully had some fun revisiting this song. I know that I certainly have, and I'm very excited for the Oasis reunion. Unfortunately, I live on the opposite side of the world to where they've announced shows, but I'll hold out in the hopes that they come down this way. As always, if you have gotten some value out of this, a like and a subscribe does go a long way in helping the channel. And maybe you'd like to check out some of the other series that we have on here. I've got one that's called From Rock to Jazz, which is a bunch of exercises and talking about the transition from playing rock guitar to jazz guitar. And there's also one called Sheets of Lead, which is a instrumental heavy metals cover series that is tied in with Spawn of Seed. As always, thanks for watching, happy playing, and I'll catch you in the next one.